We are back with another tips and tricks stream today on the YouTube. Dus. Today I am joined by my two friends, two homies, two absolute killers in the game of the music industry. Tang, if you want to introduce yourself.
What's up, guys? Why are you laughing at me? Don't laugh.
The lag. What are you on 1996 surfers?
I couldn't hear. Guys, my name is Tang. I'm from Chicago. I make crazy bass music, and I am also a chef.
Chefing it up. Chefy chefs. Alright. Looney, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's good, guys? I'm Lodian. I've been producing for a lot less time than these two here, you know. I make mainly melodic music, but I'm trying to get pretty heavy now, right? So, I'm excited to be here.
Fuck yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Alright, so...
Ian's the next Skrillex. He's been a little humble.
I want to hear it, man.
Alright, I'm gonna switch over to my first... I'm gonna give you my first tip, I guess. My first tip was mid-side EQ basics. So basically, this is a way to place your sounds in a stereo field. So when you listen to music, sometimes sounds like will sound like they're further away, or they'll sound like they're really close. And this is achieved by mid-side EQing and like placing things in the stereo field when you're mixing your track. So on my preset like thing, I'm just gonna quickly grab like just this. I'm just gonna quickly make a quarter note because quarter note is life. Hey, that's all I'm capable of making. Quarter note. I hope this is right. Alright, cool, yeah. Alright, my bad. Just had to get my audio right on that because it just fucking unclicked itself. So I'll just make a basic quarter note flow here. I'll just expand this. Let's just go 4 bars, and I'll layer it with a sound. I'll just quickly grab a preset real quick. Alright, so when you're mixing in a mid-side setting, you want to think about how you want to hear these things. Essentially, there's a secret formula, but I kind of usually tend to have my sub bass completely mono, and then my second most prominent sound that I want is going to be like my my main synth, right? So this main quarter note here. To achieve this, you do mid-side cuts. So you grab an EQ8, and you'll grab it. It'll be on stereo normally, right? You change it over to mid-side mode, and then click it so it shows up with an S. And you'll have a lot of frequencies down here, which is going to clash with your sub, and kind of muddy up your mix. So you don't want to cut them out. you have a referencing tool, something similar to like M Stereoscope. It kind of shows the different percentages and whatnot, and you can kind of reference where you want it to sit. It's all personal taste at the end of the day, but yeah. And really, that's the basics of mid-side EQ as much as it goes. You try and do this like kind of after all your processing as well, because if you do it before, and then you add all this processing, it's it's gone to waste. It will do it, but like things like saturators and whatnot will add things back. So yeah, you got to be wary of signal flow and how things are in your timeline down the bottom here. And I do the mid-side EQing on every single element in my track. Like literally every single element has a mid-side EQ with an M Stereoscope. This is a little rack that I made that I use. This is preset on everything, including a fat rack from Zeta that I got from him. And this rack I use all the time. I made this because it's just easier to use, but use it on everything. Make sure you pay attention to where things really should be, and like don't overuse it and overcut and muddy up one certain frequency, like, or one certain like stereo width or whatever. I can't think of the word right now. But if you just like layer them throughout the percentage on that scale. So if I open this plugin, if I open the M Stereoscope up again, what would be on that? It'll be on this, except for my sub. So I lied. On my sub, I do something else. But so I just layer them, in through here, anywhere 33%, 66%. That's usually what I sit for. And at the end of the day, it just sort of cleans things up and makes it a lot easier. And that's gonna finish up my first tip. So I guess we'll go over to who's next? Lodian,
Ludian, would you like to go next?
Sure, yeah, I can go next. Do I just screen share?
Yeah, screen share, bro.
All right. I'm gonna be going over. So my style is very melodic, and in a lot of my tracks, I tend to use chords. I think almost every single one of my tracks, there's some sort of chord in the track. So it's become very important, right, to make sure that, since I tend to use a lot of the same chords, right, to make sure that I implement these methods, right, in order to make them more interesting. That way, it's not just the same, progression every time, or it gives you a different vibe every time, right? So what I've arranged here, the first tip is, let's say you have like a basic chord progression here. This is just in D minor, and I'm going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord, and then the 5th, right? Very basic, and this is a progression you'll hear a lot, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and play it here. I have it arranged over 8 bars, just so you can hear the difference for after we implement the tip I'm gonna give you. So we have the 1, 5, so as you heard there, it's literally the same exact thing repeated, right? So as I said before, in my tracks I use a lot of chords, and the chords will play the entire track pretty much, right? So it's imperative that we don't just repeat this the exact same way, right? So one of the ways in which we can make this a lot more interesting right away, right, is the second time around, right? What we can do is we can use something called chord inversions, right? as you see here, this first chord is in the root position. That's fine, and then we kind of like go all the way up to the 4, right? So it's like kind of like a big shift. It makes it not sound as smooth as it can be, right? So what we can do is, and I found what works very good for these types of things is like, if you keep the chords relatively the same, but like with like the same distance, you don't want any note to be like super far from each other like this. Is you can use an inversion. So if you have your chord, you can just take any of the notes. For example, this one, this D is like poking up here. It's pretty much by itself. It's gonna make the progression sound like it's moving around too much. I can bring this down 1, right? And instantly you'll see that it's a lot smoother of a change. So it's that versus this. You know? And I think it actually sounds kind of nice with this D down here because what you can do sometimes with a lot of patches that have chords that patches that kind of keep playing if you hold a note is you can extend this note here and that will make this super smooth, right? If it's a note that sustains like this the entire way, right? So that's one of the things you can do, and we can do this as well for these. So what I can do is I can take this and move it down and make it like it's gonna sound more like it's resolving back to the 1 instead of keeping it going. See, like a lot of a very, very darker tone right there. And you can kind of just keep messing around with these. Like I can move this one down. I can move this one down. And that'll give me a different vibe as well. See? So we just did a lot, right? Now let's play them together and you'll see that it almost doesn't sound like it's the same progression when we get to that second half. See that a lot more. I would say I'm a big fan of that change on the between the second and third chord. It gave it a completely like more unique vibe than what we had before here. And it's the exact same progression. So any like melody note or anything, any other elements you had stacked on top of this would still fit perfectly. And this would just be like a subtle change that you hear. That's kind of nice in the back, you know. So these are chord inversions, and a quick tip on that is. If you don't know your music theory, I know the D minor scale, right, like off the top of my head. But if you don't know it, in Ableton there's this mode called the scale mode. So if you open up your if you have it like this, you double click on the MIDI roll like this, the piano roll, I want to say. Click on scale, and then you set the scale. I already set it here because it's D minor, but once you do that, the notes that are in that scale will be highlighted here, and that's how you know which notes you can move and still stay within the scale. In this case, we're just doing inversions for now. So what you would do is you would highlight one of these, hold shift, and then click the either down or up arrow key, and that will bring it up or down an octave. So that's how I was able to move those notes like that quickly after selecting them. So yeah, that's my first tip.
Fucking sick. That was good.
Yeah.
I like that. Alright, Tangerang. Tangalicious. Tanga baby. What you got for me, baby?
Alright. So, shouts out to Ludian, because that was fucking beautiful.
Fuck yeah.
For
Absolute
my
chord
first
master.
absolute chord master. For the first tip, I'm gonna kind of give a little insight to the whole technique, but we'll be using the OTT to get the kind of sub bass and bass colliding together, which will yield a awesome effect of just like bringing out dynamics that were never there in sounds, as well as making your sub bass fatter to that level that's like the country rhythm yeehaw style. But yeah, and it's simple as having a sub layer, and it could be a sample based or MIDI based, doesn't really matter. For me, I just chose this D note. I'm gonna turn off the effect first. So just strictly a D note, right? It's a bass sound, but the highs are cut. So the original is like this.
You've been using a sample for a sub.
Yes, samples for subs, just for controlling everything. I
Nice.
find that it's easier to
Yeah.
just visualize as well, especially when you're creating layers and like some of my flow, how would you say, techniques are based upon loop theory, right? So everything is within loops.
Yeah.
Those could be within loops of each other.
Yeah.
But besides that,
Yeah. So.
simply a D sub layer, right? High is cut, and then I've just added a literal rhythm yoi. Cut the lows from that. Then we have that together. Whoops. It's already got a nice bounce and flow to it, but the main thing is OTT, right?
I don't know what's going on with your stream audio. It's like when you play, it's just like this, like static
buzzing?
sound.
You might have to just it's buzzing. You might have to just restart the screen sharing.
Here, we'll do that.
Yeah, sorry, bro.
No, it's fine. You want to hear this? Good.
Yeah, I want to hear the good tip, bro. It's a very good tip.
Alright, so basically, you pop a multi-band dynamics on it, and you're going to actually just have it at the very highs. Make sure it's turned on. Turn on. You're going to do a very, very far pinch. Then just again have it on the highs, and then you're going to want to have it on the mids. This is just going to be the tame, those two areas, right? You're pumping them up 1 dB. I'm just matching it for this one that I've already made, but just for intensive purposes. On the mids and highs. On the output, I like to put it up 2. You could have it at 1 dB up. Really, it's just a taste. And then the lows, the output, you want to have your -1. This will be like a ceiling. And then this is where you'll be boosting your lows as well. Alright. So this is just controlling mids and highs, as well as pumping the low end. But then when you squash it together with, let's say, a bass loop and a sub bass, you can yield an awesome effect, the like whole. You go from like dynamic that isn't there, that all of a sudden is brought out.
Nice.
Be
Nice.
done.
Nice.
Like any you got, right? You're like, dude, I got the new Infect sample pack. You could drop this on here.
Oh my lord.
Jesus Christ.
What is that?
It's you know, that's pretty much it for the tip, right? Basically, the multi-band dynamic, I like to call it the Tang sub and bass collider. Does a lot. It does everything for you. You just drop in sounds on your sub bass, and it'll literally just create flows, and from there you're kind of just cruising.
I'm gonna need that in my library ASAP.
Yeah,
You already do.
I'm gonna need that
So
one
yeah,
too,
that's it
bro.
for tip 1.
Sick. Alright, well, I am gonna go back to my tip 2, which, oh, this is supposed to be like that, and then we go like this, no? This way, there we go, awesome. So my second tip was how to make a gun louder with one simple trick. This is literally the case of, if you have serum effects, this is a very cheap way, real quick. Open up serum effects, grab yourself a filter. So I'm gonna A and B this, but I'm just gonna, actually I'll play it so you guys can remember what it sounds like first, so I can actually hear what I'm doing while I'm adjusting things. And then I'll loop this section just so we can loop it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the filters. I'm going to go down to combs. I'm going to grab the cutoff filter and you're going to hear a massive difference. Wait, is this on the right one? Oh, I turned it off, that's why. What is going on with this? What the fuck? Okay, I don't know why it's doing that on that. That's weird. What the hell? Wait, I wonder if it's because it's got... Yeah, that's whack. Alright. I'm gonna have to do this on another sound. My bad. What a bad tip to start off. Sick. This guy knows so much. Fuck. Again, I'm just gonna grab a... Actually, this would be better to do it with this. Just grab a transient sound real quick. Turn that on, put that in. Alright. So we can turn this off. Alright, so now we can get the the filter. And we can put it on combs. Hopefully this works. This worked for me like several times in multiple projects in recent days, so there we go. And then you could just boost the master. And that is instantly already louder than what it was before, I can guarantee it. So if I turn this off, and that's one simple trick to make your guns louder. So in the presence of a mix, yeah, it does. It's a massive impact for a one small thing. Yeah. The other way you can do this if you don't have Serum effects is I'll turn this off. If you have Ableton Live 11 Suite, hopefully you do. Where is it? You can do it with Modest Corner. I kind of went over this in the last tips and tricks, but I'll go over it again. So I changed a few things, turn the vintage off obviously, and then I'll change it to convolution. And so the convolution, I would just control it by changing these parameters here, the decay and the size. So I'll pull my decay back to around 500 to start with, and my size will go to around 50 to 60% to start. It just depends on the kind of sound it is. Alright, so now yeah, and you can play with these settings to make them like louder, so you can do like the opposite, so you can have like little decay, a lot of size. Yeah, it's a decent difference. Yeah, that's how to do it with the stock, and then I mean, if you wanted to obviously pair those two up, you could. Turning on the filter again, and then. So this would obviously need a little bit more EQing this sound, but you get the point with that one. So yeah, that'll do my second tip. I'm gonna pass it over to whoever's next. Loading.
Yeah, got you. Nice tip you got there.
Thanks, bro.
Gonna go ahead and screen share for my next one. That was the wrong. Alright, so the beauty about the tips I'm gonna give today is that everything I say can be used, like they can be interchangeably, right? You can use all the tips together or none at all, or just a few of them, right? So with that progression I had before, let me kind of reset it here. So I will bring this back up, bring this one back up, right? The next tip to make this progression more interesting, forgot one here, would be to use something called chord substitutions, right? A little bit more complicated, but with Ableton scale mode, this will hopefully make a lot of sense without knowing much of the theory behind it, right? So what would a chord substitution be helpful for, right? So we have these four chords. I have a D minor, a G minor, back to a D minor, back to, and then into an F major, an A major, into a D minor, right? And these are, if you know your theory, these are the 1, 4, and 5 chords, right? Very like common chords to use in a chord progression. And the idea with having the 5 chord here, which is the A major, is that it strongly resolves back to D. So I'm gonna play these two back to back, and you'll see that this A major sounds like it really wants to go down to D minor, right? Like there's a nice tension resolution happening here. So I can end the song here, right? I could end the song right there. It sounds final, right? This is called a cadence, right? This is called a cadence. And we can end the song here because this was a root, and this is something that's referred to as the dominant, right? So the dominant wants to resolve, the dominant of the scale, in this case A major, which is the 5 of D minor, wants to resolve back to D minor, right? And the problem with this sometimes is that because here I just have 8 bars, right? If I extended this over to, not 8 bars, sorry, 16 bars. If I extended this to 32, then 64, etc., right? It will get boring very, very quickly. And if I keep, for lack of a better word, of using this cadence here, right? It's gonna sound like it's ending every 4 bars, right? So how can we change that? What we can do is we can substitute one or more of these chords. In this case, since I'm talking about the tension resolution between the 5 and the 1 here, I'm going to change this D minor chord so that when I play the entire progression, it does not sound like it's resolving back here and starting over, but rather continuing, right? And I can do that very easily here. So what you can do is, if you have a minor chord, right, what you can do that will always work, usually always work, right, is what you can use, you can take the relative major of that minor chord. And the way you find the relative major of a minor chord is you take the root note and you go up 3 semitones, right? And a semitone is just, in this case, if you're looking at the Ableton MIDI timeline here, you just go up 3, right? So if I start on D and I go up 3, 1, 2, 3, I end up on F. So the relative major of D minor is F major, right? Now, I won't go into the specifics of building an F major chord. This is something you should maybe watch a video on your own time. It's pretty simple, but it would be too long for this video. I know what the F major chord is, and I would just need to take this I would just need to take this D note down to F major, right? But now I have an F major chord, and now listen to the difference that they made. You see that? It sounds like now we're like kind of storytelling, right? Instead of ending our story here, right? Instead of ending it there, we can just keep it going. See? So that's kind of something you can do right there. Now, this is just one chord change. Imagine if I very often do it with multiple chords, right? I sometimes have 16-bar chord progressions that are where I never hit the exact same chord twice, right? And this is kind of what I'm doing. These subtle changes that the listener doesn't notice, that are subtle, but then like still capture the atmosphere of like keeping the story pushing along, you know? So this changer, I kind of don't like it. So what I'll do is I'll bring it back here. I don't like it as much as if I did this, for example, right? And what I've just done here is it is a chord substitution, right? But what I've done is I've just chosen another chord in that scale, which is the B flat major chord, right? And if you don't know what that is, you don't know where it is in the scale, it doesn't matter. Use Ableton scale mode as we have here, and just move any of the notes up to any other green note, right? So what I did here is I went from this A to this B flat, right? Now listen to the difference. See, this one to me sounds a bit more triumphant than like this one, which is a bit more melancholic, right? You can see how much of a difference we got in the progression just from doing that. Now, if I play the entire thing, right, and listen to how this doesn't sound like it's restarting. Whereas if I had it here, play it from here really quickly. Right, sounds like it restarts there. Now, let's play around with this a little bit more, right? This was one chord change, and I said that for the relative major of a minor chord, D minor in this case, right? All you do is you can take the, you can go up 3 semitones and find that major chord that has that root note, right? So this here, let me bring this down back to F major. Let's say I use F major here. Now let me pick a major chord that goes into a minor chord, right? So what we've got in this progression is we had this A major here, right? So to go from a major to minor, right, you would go down 3 semitones instead of up, right? So I said this is A major, so what you would need to do is go down 3. So we go 1, 2, 3. Oopsies. So we can take this A major and go down 3. This would land us on the F sharp, right? This is out of key. Don't get scared, all right? But we can rearrange some of these notes here. Maybe not that high. Take this one up. Now. See how much more, I mean, this was a lot of tension, so maybe I can bring this note maybe down to the scale so that it's not as jarring. All right? Now, that doesn't sound very pleasant, which is why you have to be careful, since this is the dominant of this scale, right? Messing around with this chord, and especially with a note that's out of key like that, will make it sound a little bit more jarring, right? But this has its uses, right? I don't like that much, so let's move this back to this. Let's substitute more of these chords. So let's take this G minor and change it to a B flat major. I know the relative major already. This is G minor, so the relative major would be B flat major, which would be this one. right? And then let's take this second D minor. I'm repeating the D minor a lot in this progression. So maybe let's take this one and change that to an F major and make this one the B flat major. Now listen to the progression. In our results, you see that now it sounds to me, at least to me, right? It sounds like we've taken a 4-bar progression that repeated twice, right, and we turned into an 8-bar, like completely, pretty much a new progression. To me, this sounded like one full progression versus 2 progressions that repeat, right? And all I've done is move a couple of notes around, right? And without theory, you can just move any of these notes really, to anything that's highlighted. In this case, mine is green, but it will be the highlighted notes in the scale mode, and you can just change any of those chords. So that will do it for my second tip. There's a lot more I can say, but for now, just keep it here. Okay.
Nice. That was fucking sick. Absolutely goated with the chords, mate.
Makes me actually want to play the piano.
If
If only I knew how.
Alright,
Alright.
Tangerang. Let's get it, baby.
Mine will probably be fairly brief. It isn't too much. Everybody nowadays has some sort of stereo rack, I'm sure, that they use, and it really doesn't matter. They're all kind of the same. So for this next tip, it'll be about using width to get rid of mud, as well as making things louder. Because I find that if you have a muddy sound, sometimes you can sneak around it by throwing it into the stereo field and then cleaning it up. So makes your life a little bit easier. So the last thing that I showed for tip 1, I kind of just added a couple things and created 2 sections, an A and B, where you can hear no stereo and then with the stereo cleanup. So I'll play with the cleanup first. So what we got here is like one of the best ways to A and B it is with the sustain. So most people have their stereo rack, and basically all I can't stress enough is just having your stereo rack on whatever muddy sound you could have. So like this is the initial. Sounds like a choo-choo train, Thomas the Train coming through town. But then you throw, let's say, your stereo width on, and then it starts throwing it into your left and right field. And then minus these two, these are just a phaser and something to make it barely louder. But your EQing at the end is really what takes the cake once you throw it into your stereo field. Because then you actually have some sort of EQ at the last second, but this is more so in your side information as well as mid that will be present. So another little AV that I could do is with this bass sound, which is more simple, just stereo, and then an EQ. Phaser is just a bunch of EQs. It's really nonsense. That's like with the cleanup, it'll be this. Thrown way more into the stereo field. Then your no stereo, this is without anything, would be more. So just more muddy in your face as opposed to around you. And then, yeah, I mean, this layer together, right? I mean, it's just a bunch of layering that'll actually help visualize, or actually help, fill your sonic spectrum, your sound field. It'll kind of push you to the next level. It's a very easy trick. I mean, it's as simple as having your stereo and then an EQ. So any kind of muddy sound, muddy bass sample, whatever you want, you pop a stereo and an EQ on it, and then it immediately can clean it up. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the tip. Hollow, you still there?
That was a super hot fire trick.
I hope it was like actually conveyable over Discord, like if you could actually hear it, or rather over the stream.
Yeah, I've checked a little bit.
Sorry, my.
Sounded pretty good. Sounded pretty good live.
Good. Welcome back, Mr. Hollow.
Sorry, I had to just quickly run out there. My bad. I just missed the very last bit at the end. My bad.
Nah, you're good. It's a very simple one.
I like it though. It's a good tip.
I'll give you the little rundown. Basically, stereo and an EQ. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Lodian, you gave your second tip, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, I got my second tip in.
All right. Cool. All right. I'm gonna go.
How are you?
I'm gonna go for my third tip. So. Basically, a simple trick to layer guns, and how to make like Terra guns, like heavy, is simply to apply Tang's previous trick, with multiple layers. So similar thing of clipping the guns with the sub and boosting the sub in the same group as the guns, to get that crunch. When you layer multiple sounds, you'll get crazy, different, like, how do I say this? Results. Sorry. So. So we got that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly take this out of mono. I'm going to change this sound real quick. I'm just going to make this, let's go like a real quick, just like a pingy sound. So we got that one, so let's boost this one up. We'll turn this one down. And then on my master, I'm just going to quickly chuck an EQ. I just want to hear that sub a little bit more. I'm going to make sure that it's before my Pro L. I'm going to turn on that and that. I also went through this, I'm pretty sure, in the last stream. Alright, so let's say I want this clipping more. And so this is where you can do some really cool things. So if you wanted to just on the fly make some changes to something like while you're going, why is this not going to work for me? Yes, it is. Alright. So if I say I just want this one here, and so this is what I'm going to use to change the sound itself, so I can find a better layer for it, like a better place to layer it. So if I press the record button when this is recording, and I go into this, so we've got it normal right now, right? Alright, so the cool thing about this, right, is that whole entire thing gets recorded in that loop. All those changes. So we've now just gone from an 8-bar loop to a 32-bar drop, just with that alone. So if I now duplicate this over and throughout, and we open this up, I'll just quickly skim through so you can hear the changes, but you hear throughout that. I need to turn that off because it's already delayed. So that, sorry, I lied. We went from 4 bars to 16. Oh wait, no, that is 32. What am I talking about? Alright, so that's one way to add to the layer. So now I have that layer, I can remove that one. So what I'm looking for when I'm building gun layers is I'm looking for a low mid, a mid, and a high. Now to find those layers, it's not like, oh yeah, just find a high frequency, just find a low mid frequency. It's things that emulate that sound. So sorry, I was just reading the chat as I was going over. Sorry. So if I'm going to use that as a basis, right, my low is instantly going to be my sub, right? So my sub is my low. I've got a low, I would say maybe I've got a mid here, like the mid, which is mainly this resampled bass. That's going to be like my mid, maybe my like mid/high. I could probably do a bit of EQing to this to dull the highs a little bit. So it's a bit more mid. We could also probably make it a deeper tone, so overall it's just lower. Alright, so now we've got that as a mid, right? Now our high layer would be something like the transient, right? That real quick punchy layer, right? So I'm going to EQ this a bit better as well. I'm also going to place this a bit better in a stereo field. So I kind of want that to be real like forward in the mix. Alright, so I'm going to have it like that. And I'm just going to go back over to my Fat Rack. I'm going to turn this up. So this sound here is going to be fucking extremely wide. I can almost assume and guarantee that it's going to be. Yeah. So we want to tame this a little bit. So we still keep that wide sound, but it's in the stereo field not as wide as it was before. Alright, so now what I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for one more layer to add some sort of crunch or some sort of like low mid, sort of mid heavy, or maybe even a tonality layer. And this is where this is totally up to the user of whatever you feel like making at the current point in time. But I made a tear out track last night that I started adding melodies to, and I was actually vibing with it and I thought it was fucking sick. Usually I wouldn't do that, but for some reason last night I was just in a very experimental mode. But yeah, anyway, so we could try two different ones to achieve our layer that we're wanting. So I'm going to quickly try. Alright, so let's try a tonal layer. Let's see what the tonal layer does in the way of like adding oomph to the gun. And that I would say is, you know, a decent way to layer guns. And I mean, it even goes as far as like I can turn all these off. If you don't have Serum or anything like that, if I was to explain it as like in samples, I will literally grab 3 random samples right now off the bat. I will go and I will show you how you can layer. So let's get one like this, and then we'll get, where's the one? Let's go with this one. We'll go this one as well. We're going to trim this, and then let's just go. Base one shots. Sample searching real quick. I need to make sure this is a good sample to get my point across. Perfect. Alright, cool. So, when layering these 3, I've got a transient, I've got sort of a mid layer, which is this one here. I'll put them in order of how they would sound. So I'll close this up. So sub, which is your low, this is the low mid, this is the mid, this is the high, right? I'm going to tame this by bringing this transient in here, so it doesn't actually hit that same transient as what this one is hitting down here. And I'll layer these together and we'll make this a quarter note flow just like the rest of the track. This is my favorite thing to do. Just Control D all the way. Alright, and so yeah, that's pretty much a different variation in the sound and how it sounds. And you can go, you know, you can change things, add, you know, different pitches and whatnot, go in, just highlight, you know, notes that kind of are like near the end of a section of like 4 or 8 bars, warp them, pitch them, change them, do whatever you need to do to get that sort of variation. And so if I did that over and over and over again, that's so you can hear how each layer is adding an individual sort of thing to it. So you got your transient, your mid, which is like that reverby kind of airy layer to add all of, you know, that room, or to add all of that extra like reverb that fills up the space. Sorry, I'm so bad at explaining things. And then I've got like my low mid, which is kind of giving me that sort of crunch and meatiness that I want. So realistically, I could probably beef this one up so it overpowers this one here. Just slightly though, not a heap. And my last bit on this tip, I'm sorry boys, I know I'm going on for ages, but this is a bit of a bigger one. The last bit of this is that it doesn't always have to follow the same thing. So let's say I want this transient, I want this one to hit, you know, like twice, or, you know, like offbeat kind of thing. So it's like, and you can layer it and do, you know, different things, different movements. So yeah, cool. I changed that one. I was just making sure before I start copying things over. And then all you do literally from here, highlight all of these, Command Shift Tab, warp them all, pitch them down a little bit. Whatever sounds good. If the pitching isn't working, just chuck on a fucking frequency shifter on, you know, a whole group of them. Make sure it's before your clipper if you've got a clipper on there or anything like that. Obviously automate it, and so wrong way, sorry. It's because this isn't in the same group, that's why I stopped clipping, fuck's sake. another problem. I gotta fix it later on. But anyway, that is essentially how you would layer your guns. Don't do that thing on the whole group. Just ignore that. But yeah, you get the point of making variation and how to layer guns. You don't always have to do the same thing, and think in frequency sections. Low, mid, high, mid, and then high, and then just base it off of that. You can also do like transienty bass, like your sub and your reverby bass. But yeah, that's going to be my third tip. Sorry boys, that went on for a little bit.
You're all good.
All right. Yeah. Who's next? Lodian, Tang.
All right, I can go next here for the final tip.
Yep.
My final tip. This might be this is gonna be a decently long one, but I'll keep it short. So last time, is my screen up by the way?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the first two tips I went through, we had our original progression that I've now got here. You have a basic chord progression, right? We had the chord inversions, right? Where you take any of the notes from whatever the chords you've already established, right? And you kind of move them up and down an octave using shift, highlight the note up and down on a keyboard, right? So we had something like this where I move these notes closer to each other, right? Closer together like that with the chord inversions, right? Maybe I'll do this, bring this one down like that, or even take this one, bring it down, maybe this one, bring it down, right? To get a spicier version of this progression, right? And then we went over the chord substitutions where I'll literally change the chord that's at that spot, right? I can either pick another one of the green notes, or I can do the parallel major or minor, so going from a major to a minor chord or minor to major chord, right, and replace it, right, and see if that gives me a tone that I like, right? So now a way you can go even further than that is something called chord extensions, right? Now we're stepping into really, I won't say jazz territory, but we're starting to get there, right? And this is kind of where a lot of us, including myself, will stop, right? Won't go too far into this realm, right? But because it gets pretty crazy really quickly. So the idea with chord chord extensions is, if we go to the chord progression we had, right? A chord extension is simply adding if you have a chord in root note position like this, so D, F, A, D minor chord, what we can do is we can pick another note to add on top of it, right? So now instead of a 3-note chord, it's a 4-note chord, right? And this won't sound that great, right? Because I just picked a B flat major that doesn't sound that good. But a way using the scale mode that you can get a chord extension that's going to sound good from the get-go is you can imagine you look at any note, right, in your chord, and just go to every other highlighted note. So from A, right, I would go, what's the next highlighted note? B flat major. I'll skip that and then do the C instead. What we've now done here for the people with no theory is we've made a D minor 7th chord, right? And if we listen to the difference, right? So already we're already getting a much different tone for this chord here, right? And we can go and do this for like all the chords. I can do this. I won't even go into what chord it is. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna add these additional tones here. So every other one. I can even skip one, right? So for this last one, for this second to last one, maybe instead of going to the next one, I'll go to the one after that and then pitch it down like that. Already sounds different. Okay. Didn't like this one very much, so we'll keep it to this. And this is what I mean. It's kind of trial and error, right? Your ears are the final end all be all, right? It's whatever your ears like. You see, and with these extensions I've done here, these chord extensions, it kind of made it already sound like a different chord progression altogether, right? So, and that's like versus this, which sounds very basic, you know, and obvious. All right, so now, right, the fun part of doing this is if I take the original one here, duplicate it. The fun part is when we get to combine all three of them together, right? So here I've already done a couple of inversions here, so maybe let's add some more and do some substitutions. I liked this substitution here, so I'll move that up. I liked when this one was down here. This is a inversion, and I liked this inversion here. I liked this D minor 7, but I don't like it being the first note of the chord, so maybe I'll move it in the first chord of the progression. I'll move it to here, or I could pick any of the other D minors. Maybe I'll do it here instead, right? So that's an extension. This was an inversion. We have a substitution here. I want to do one more substitution. So a cool trick I like when I've got these I keep saying 4 bars, it's 8 bars, but four chord progression, right? When I have it repeating, right, what I like to do is change it the second time around, right? So I'll have a really basic one, right? I could have even kept the original one here, and then the second time around I'll change it. And then if I repeat it for another complete group of these, so like another 16 bars, I will change it again, right? And that's going to keep your chord progression as fresh as possible throughout the entire song, right? And I'll do this throughout, right? And the important thing is I'm not doing anything too drastic unless the song I'm making calls for it. For example, like a very high tension song, like a horror song or something like that, right? I'm not going to be messing around too much with the chord extensions and doing too much, right? You don't want to stray too far from what you already had, because what you already had is what you liked, right? You kind of just want to build on top of that versus changing it altogether, right? Unless that's intentional, right? So as I said, the second time around, repeating this G minor, what I can do is instead of having just this inversion, what I can do is I can substitute it for a B flat major chord. So to get a B flat major chord, I would move this G to, I believe, an F. So let me find the F here, like that. So now what I've done is this chord got an it got a substitution as well as a inversion, right? I can go even further. I can make this a chord extension and just add another note, maybe not the G, maybe like a C, right? And I've just made this really big chord that uses all three things we learned today, right? Let's hear what that sounds like. All right, now, I don't like this very much. I know what the problem is, this C. So I mean, as I said, you know, trial and error. Didn't like that top C very much. This is better, but maybe I like this G to be up here. See, like this G is kind of far away, that's why it has that tone. But if I move it closer, it shouldn't be as jarring. See? That versus this, all right? See on this sounds. That's fine. Maybe I wanted to resolve down instead, so I'll move that down. And what I like to do a lot is you can kind of see it visually, right? It's like a staircase, right? I like to go up and down and up and down. That's dynamics, right? If I was just repeating it, it would go up and then start in the middle again and then go back up. Here we're going up, and then when we start at a different point and go down. This will make it sound like an not entirely different, but a pleasant change, and I'm pretty satisfied with that right there, right? So we just applied all three methods to get this progression. Now, if we listen to the original, right, and let me kind of, here's a cool trick you can pick up is if you change the color of this, right, and you highlight both, you hold shift and double, if you select one of them, hold shift and double click the next one, as you can see both of them in the same timeline.
What?
Yeah, so you can.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so you can see, yeah, working in media a lot, I've
Bro,
when I'm trying to change the chord instead of having to click around the timeline.
that's insane.
W right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Bro.
So you can see here in the, and if I click the red,
What?
right? If I highlight the red, we only see the red chords. If I highlight the green, we only see the green chords. If, for the ones that are overlapping, at least you only see the green ones. So, I like to do this sometimes to see. Here we can clearly see what I've done, right? So
Yeah.
we had these two chords, and then this one I added this note. This one I changed it to this one, etc., etc. Right? You can see the differences here, like that. So now what I'll do is I'll play each one, and we can hear. You guys can vote, or you guys can tell me which one sounds better, which one is less boring, etc. Right?
The original
It is
one.
the case sometimes that maybe you like the original one, the simple one repeating better, right? But let's listen to them. I'll play this one through and I'll play the other one, then in the next one all the way through, and you guys can tell me. And on the next one. All right. So which one did you guys like better?
I preferred the track that's titled 33 MIDI. That was 31 MIDI, sorry.
That one's my favorite one as well.
Red or
31 MIDI is my absolute favorite.
Shout out 31 MIDI in the
Yeah, boy! That was a banger!
At least
No, I'm
it's not this
joking.
first one.
I'm joking. No,
But,
the red one was
yeah,
cool.
to me, at least yeah. So the way I would describe it is this one takes me on more of a journey.
Yeah. Well, story
This is
building.
why exactly. Yeah. So very often I don't even start a song usually, right? Unless I'm sound designing and things, unless I have like a progression or some melodic theme or idea to go off of, you know? Because to me, like this already inspires me to create a story around it, and the basses and everything I make, the drums, everything will be molded to fit this story, you know? So whatever like emotions and feelings I'm getting from this is what I'm trying to emulate in the song I'm going to create, right? And this one gives me a lot more to work with than this one here, right? Because now, and I'm not going into arrangement in this call, right? But if I was to arrange this, right, I have all my bass notes in here. I can, since the beauty about arranging into chords is you can technically pick any of these notes for your sub bass, right? Or your re bass or whatever mid bass, right? I can choose any of these. And you will have a lot of fun, in my opinion, right? Kind of nitpicking which note you want to be playing when, right? And when things are stacked like this, for example, if I had this quadrant, I have another track that's a bass track that's playing a different note, right? Those two things make a chord, you know? That's not so different from playing a piano chord on the keyboard, right? Where you're holding all the notes, right? So everything is just chords. That's how I visualize it, right?
Life is
So-
just chords.
Life is indeed chords. You have this is a chord with the bass, and then if I have a melody line, a top line, or whatever, that also makes a chord. As long as they're playing on top of this, they all make a chord, right? So that's kind of what you can do now. I prepared an example of a track I've made, which literally plays the chords through the entire song. There's not one spot in here where the chords aren't playing, right? So you can imagine it's important to do something like this where I keep it interesting, right? So here, this is a track I've released. It's called Carnation. I've already I had made a 4-bar progression similar to this, right? And you can kind of hear it, and you will see that it doesn't sound like it repeats, right? It sounds similar, but it doesn't repeat. And I've actually managed to extend it instead of what was this 4 bars over 16 bars. So I've turned it into a 16-bar chord progression, right? So if you listen to it here, and try listen for the changes. Starts again. The second time it goes up. Alright. So I don't remember the chords I used for this, but I can already tell which methods I use, right? This first 4 bar is the regular progression. When it repeats again, right, I go up instead of down on this last chord, right? Right, that last note, right? That makes it sound like that's kind of throwing you into the chord substitution I have here, right? This is a different chord. Sorry, chord inversion that I have here. I remember this track. It's a this is the same 1 chord, but I pitched the top note down, so I did a chord inversion. But it makes it sound like a different chord because it's going from this one I was like kind of going up and then down to this one which was changed. So it doesn't sound like the exact same. Sounds like it keeps going, right? Instead of starting over. And I repeat it here again. And then this time around, I go up. Alright, so staircase. So we did a staircase here, right? And I do the same thing in the drop, right? You'll see. Here's a breakdown section. Alright, same chords. We go skip to the drop. Now, remember when I said the beauty about arranging into chords is you can make the track very, very melodic very easily because all you have to do, right, is what you have to do is take any of the notes from that chord progression, right? So you can imagine I maybe had it here or something and then move this down to like so it can be right next to it here. You can imagine if I had it like this, right? You can hear in the drop. Is this the drop? Yeah. You can hear in the drop, I have something that sounds like a top melody, right? Those were just notes from the chord that I chose, right? Same thing with the bass. The bass is granted I'm using pitch map and vocoders, vocoding them 2 chords, right? Vocoder them to a melody, right? Same thing with the sub bass. Sub bass is moving around playing that melody, right? Everything is moving along in harmony with this chord progression. So everything banks on this chord progression being interesting, right? So I didn't have to try very hard. All I had to do was sound design, and the arrangement was already done for me. The storytelling was pretty much already done, right? So that's how much dimension like this chord progression is adding. And like here, in the second half of this drop, you'll hear I'm adding more elements, doing the same thing. I have an arpeggiated thing going, playing the same exact chords. Maybe I did some inversion substitutions and things here and there. But I can do that trick and just stack them and keep stacking and stacking until as much as I want, right? And they'll just fit harmonically perfectly. I don't know how many elements you guys counted, but I count the bass, the melody layer, there's the arp layer, there's a choir, and there's another like voice layer. So it's like about 5 or more, right? All doing the same thing, right? And you'll find that versus like making, let's say, a rhythm track, right, where you usually tend to stick to the root note and maybe move to the 4 and the 5, and go back down, right? With chords, you get multiple options, right? And the way those tones interact with each other, right? That's going to give you a lot more interesting sounds, in my opinion, right? Where it's not so much geared towards the sound design you choose, but rather the voicings you choose, right? The story that the um, all the elements want to help tell, So that's pretty much it. Without going into too much more detail, everything we went over today, I could talk about for many hours, right? But I was just hoping to show like an easy way to get going with this type of stuff without knowing too much theory. And the Ableton scale mode does help a lot in that aspect. So that's it for my third tip.
All right, sick. Fucking oath. Tangerang!
Well, fucking cheers to Ludian. He's helped me with a lot of my song structure with adding his set aspects to my stuff. Now I'm on nowhere near the level of that, but yeah.
No, you've applied them pretty well. It shows in your new intros. Your new intros are infinitely more interesting.
Listen.
What he's saying is your music was ass before.
What I'm saying is it was fire as heck before, and now it's a volcano erupting.
Alright, volcanoes. Alright, third tip.
Okay, Volcay bros.
Using the transient mode for tightening and loosening sounds. And this showcase will actually be the compilation of all three techniques, which all three tips wrapped up in a nutshell. The first one was using OTT to get the Hall effect. Second one was using width to get rid of the mud. Then now this third will be using transient warp mode for tightening and loosening sounds. All right. So, RIP to your ears. I hope this ain't loud. But one of the most beautiful things in Ableton is the transient beats mode. Or sorry, the warp mode, but beats and transient mode for loosening and tightening sounds. It is basically an effect that will loosen and tighten based upon the transient that occurs, and it will remove ambient noises that are occurring on the tails. So basically a transient shaper that removes tail and brings it in, making it more plucky, similar to Kiloheart's transient shaper, but this is built into Ableton. Now, a sound with no transient shaping with the beats mode would be this sound. So this will be our A, and RIP any ears. It is a gun sound, but it's more open. But when you use the beats mode, and then you go down to transient, and then you could put it to the arrow that moves to the right, and like, let's say put it on 42, it will tighten up the sound. It's a very easy technique of making guns for most sounds. You hear that little stereo feedback? Gotta love that. That's what we're making, robot noises. But almost every single one of my, let's say more plucky sounds actually uses this technique, right? The main sound here uses this technique for this track that I'm currently working on. It's basically just, again, beats mode, transient, arrow to the right, tightening it up. And then you get some awesome effects once you start layering them all together. And then I'll just showcase like what I'm doing here. And again, almost every single one of these sounds are being done with beats mode, transient shaping. You could do all this with samples. You don't really need MIDI much for what I'm doing. So it's like the antithesis of what Ludian's doing, because he's more MIDI oriented and I'm more audio oriented. But when you combine those together, that's when you become a crazy producer. That's for sure. One day we'll get there.
Gangster.
You get the point. We don't need to play the whole thing.
Why not?
Because, as well, I wanted to also showcase this. I mean, it's a fairly simple idea. I know it's a very easy tip, but I did another thing as well that would showcase it. And here is your little before. Right? No transient shaping. I can't stress it enough how easy this shit is to create flows. Shit sounds like a pop can, right? But then you transient shape beats again. This time this is 22, so it's tighter. Just tightens it up, right? This whole thing's made like that. Yeah, and that's a compilation of all three techniques or tips that I have provided. The collider, the beats mode, as well as the stereo imaging.
No.
Piled together, you can create something very similar, if not way better than that bullshit.
Alright.
Alright, that's it.
Well, I think that's gonna wrap up the tips. I don't think I have really anything else I could touch up on this stream. I kind of want to save it for
I
the
could
next
talk
one.
forever if you want me to, you know. I talk about chords, but yeah, we'll save that for
Stop
next
'em.
time.
Actually, one thing I want to add, just real quick. This is a really cool trick. I wanted to talk about this before. This is kind of similar to what Tang is doing as well. But I'm just gonna grab. I just need like a basic as fuck melody. Perfect. Alright, so I'll just put this in here, right? And I'll quickly do this. So going off of what Tang was saying with the modes, so we have it like that. We change it to transients. You can obviously do that mode. But if you change it to 1/8 or something, or 1/4, so before and then after, you could go as far as you want. You can go to 16. And so if I wanted this, let's say I wanted this to come through, and as one of my layers. I'll turn that off. I'll grab a vocoder. I'll chuck this on external. And then the input is going to come from that melody loop that we were just playing around with. And now it's going to come through these guns. So you got to also turn the channel off. But yeah. And that's the one little simple trick that I just wanted to quickly glance over while we were talking about that, because yeah, you can go stupid dumb with it, man. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Change the quarter notes. And I can change the channel that it's on. I can move it to another channel. But yeah, that's that. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't know if anyone else has anything quickly they want to say and add. No?
That's pretty much it from my side.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I mean, those three techniques are pretty much very pivotal to my sound, and I hope anyone enjoys that, you know.
Nice, nice.
Same as well. Feel free, if you're in a Discord, feel free to hit me up. I'm always down to talk about chords.
Yeah, join the Discord. There's plenty of links around to join the Discord. Yeah, there's always someone in there. And
follow me on SoundCloud and Instagram. Tang that out.
Alright, boys. We're gonna leave it there, and then we'll see you guys at the next stream, I guess. Alright, see ya.